All right. Mike, are you
I am alive and
ready?
well. I am here.
Okay. Awesome. Well, everyone, my name is Matt Kuntz. I'm the executive director of NAMI Montana, and we are really grateful to have you back for another NAMI Montana mental health webinar series. And it is sponsored by the Addictive and Mental Disorders Division for the state of Montana, and we're really grateful for their support. We were planning on starting this in November, and that was going to be our first one. But Jordan Brown, who I just inherently trust on all things related to mental health, technology, you name it, said you have to meet Mike Vosters a few weeks ago, and we had a phone call. And Mike told us a little bit about the Mental Health League and his work, and I was like, okay, the webinar starts. the webinar starts this month. We're getting people to be able to hear about Mike, because it was just really, really cool to hear about Mike's vision and his efforts, and just an all-around interesting person trying to change the world for the better. So we're so grateful to Mike Vosters for being willing to speak today, and for Jordan Brown for continuing to just find amazing things to help improve people's lives. Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. And I'm flattered. What an introduction. You said you keep it brief, but that was amazing. So yeah, hello everyone. I am Mike Vosters. I'm currently in Dallas, Texas, although I've been nomadic for about the past year since 2020 hit. And I'm the co-founder of Mental Health League. So today I'll kind of go over, I guess, my personal story and how that led to the company. And what I think is really cool, or I guess what the mission of it is, but like also what I think is the story for a lot of people in mental health is their personal impact that then led them to kind of be an activist or start a business in the mental health space. So I guess I'll start from the beginning. So I did not work in mental health. I went to school for technology and marketing, and I got out. I worked at different startups, but the last thing I did, the most recent, I was a partner at a company called the Elephant Pants. And at the Elephant Pants, we sold pants and donated to elephants. It went really well. We ended up donating about $250,000 to elephant conservation. And I kind of saw the power of how to build community around an interest. And so after I got out of that company, I kind of took that mindset. I was like, for the first time in my life, I want to do something not just for a paycheck. I want to do something that really matters to me. And mental health was always that cause. So I had been diagnosed with bipolar type 2 and ADHD while I was in college. I was really blessed that the university had free mental health services, because if they didn't at that time, I probably would not have been diagnosed. And I think due to that early diagnosis, I was able to get on medication and kind of understand how my mind worked. And so I'm really, really grateful for my university for providing that. I went to Texas Christian University in Fort Worth, Texas. And I do think that kind of gave me a better mindset. So, and then the second thing is my family we don't really have cancer or a lot of other things, but we do have is a lot of addiction that runs in my family, a lot of depression. And so both in my personal experience and my family experience, I saw just the impact and kind of the negative effects of mental health. So when looking at this, and when I got out of the Elephant Pants, I was looking at, okay, how do I do something good for the mental health world? And I kind of did two things that came to mind. So from my family experience, I grew up in Kansas City, and my family never really talked about mental health, and whether it's a generational thing, but I also think kind of a cultural thing in the Midwest is we didn't. I mean, there had been multiple suicides in my family, both my grandfather and one of my uncles, and there were some very tragic events along with some addiction. And my family never really talked about it. It was more swept under the rug. And so I kind of thought first is like, how do I do something that'll appeal to my family, to people I know, to like Midwestern culture, to men, as both of the suicides in my family were males. So I wanted to create something that could have that universal appeal, because I looked in the mental health space, and because women are more likely to get mental health care, most of the companies and the investment dollars all go to that. All of the branding is generally very feminine. The images on the sites are usually females. And so I wanted to have something that was more universal. And the second thing, obviously, I was raising money with an e-commerce company. And so I was like, okay, I'll stay in that vein. What can I do that does that? So right now, MHL is more of almost like a group therapy app. But in the beginning, what it started out is, how do I create a brand that's going to raise money for mental health and do that? So I remember when I was in college, I remember seeing this image, like just some random painting on the internet or some creative, of an illustration of a bipolar bear. And it's something I had always stuck with me, because I was like, it made the bipolar seem a lot less scary and more of something that, not to be proud of, but something like I had more of an identity around it. So the bipolar bear always stuck with me, and I always wanted to like blow that up or have artwork of that like in my house or in my room, just to kind of represent my identity. But so I kind of like went back to that. I was like, oh, bipolar bears, that sounds like a sports mascot. What if we created a sports league? That would definitely appeal to men in kind of the more stigmatized communities. Although a fun fact, 45% of sports fans are female. So it's not really as gender biased as you think it would be. But so I came to that, and then I was like, oh, what could we call it? Just so it's not just a bipolar brand. I was like, oh, the Mental Health League. Oh, the MHL. Wow, that abbreviation could not be any better to rhyme that. It was either the MHL of the Mental Health League or the Mental Fitness League, which would be the MFL. I feel like mental fitness, I like the term mental health because I just think it's more direct. But yeah, so we went with the MHL. And so I was like, okay, this is easy. Let's create mascots and let's sell hats. And so I have these hats here. This is not what the business is now, but I had some lying around. So this is a bipolar bears hat. That is that mascot. We have the foggy dogs for depression, which was just like rise above the fog. And I know if anybody's familiar with depression, you get kind of foggy. We have the anxieties, which is a manatee. And then we have an ADHD. So I just thought this was really fun. Oh, and then this is kind of one of the general logos. Is like, I wanted to have a brain that looked like a ball, like similar to any of the other league logos. So I found a graphic designer who's the perfect person for this. He always designs sports logos. So we had those developed, and we launched a Kickstarter, basically to have an anti-stigma campaign, sell these, donate a portion of the profits. And so we raised about $15,000. It was great, very supportive of my family and friends. And the cool thing at this point was that I realized a lot of people came out of the woodworks in my life. My family, we had like very serious discussions at a family reunion after I had launched this, which was really cool to see just that change within my family. And then also it was pretty wild to see how many people I knew that were very close to me that were strongly affected by mental health. So like one of my best childhood friends was also bipolar. Neither of us had ever talked about it. And that was like, man, I don't know if y'all have ever had those experiences, and I feel like bipolar might be a little bit different because people definitely don't want to admit they are a lot of times. But it was so impactful to now have people in my life that I could talk to about this and had shared experiences. And I felt even less alone in that. So that was the whole point of this. If you're on a team, so a cool thing about sports psychology is if you're a fan of a sports team, you feel like you're a part of something. You buy the gear, you wear it. If you see somebody else on the street, like my family's all Packers fans, they're all from Wisconsin for the most part. So like if they see somebody else, if we were in Kansas, you see somebody with a Packers jersey on, you immediately start a conversation, you talk, you ask where they're from. And so I kind of saw that happening in my life, albeit people didn't necessarily want to wear the hats, not everybody, but it sparked a lot of conversation, which was incredibly powerful. And then the second thing that was really amazing is after the campaign, a lot of people did buy the hats, and we got reviews and that were just like, I mean, it was kind of cool because it wasn't just, I figured to be mostly millennials, maybe Gen Z, but I'll never forget this one. We got tagged in an Instagram post, and it was a man that was about probably in his 50s. And he wrote a very long emotional post. He was wearing the bipolar bears hat. And he's like, this is the first time I've ever felt seen. And when I opened the box, I felt like stronger, and I felt like I was a part of something. And I mean, that's exactly what I set out to create the brand to be. And it was kind of this amazing thing to know that just to have a symbol for the first time and not a symbol. Like a lot of, I really am perturbed by generally when you market mental health, it's like a person crying or like in a very dark, dimly lit place or doing something bad to themselves. And I really hate that because I want people, if you're depressed or you're going through really tough times, like I don't want to see someone else that's like that. That's generally how marketing works. If you want somebody to buy a running product, you have pictures of them running. But like if you're selling a depression product, I don't want to feel more depressed about it, about who I am. I want to feel good about like, this is going to make me feel better. Um, so it was cool to know that like the brand we created fulfilled that purpose and fulfilled what we wanted it to do. But as I went through it, it's probably about, we did this for about 6 months. I started launching t-shirts and other things. And I realized a few things that marketing mental health is very difficult. And I knew this coming into it because I had looked at doing other businesses that were more data driven. But I realized I wanted to do something that was mission driven. And I knew coming into it, mental health is a very difficult industry because you're marketing to a population that doesn't want help a lot of times. There's a large population that doesn't believe in therapy. They don't want to admit they want help, or they just feel weaker for asking for help. On top of that, you can't really run ads to bipolar. If I was marketing a running product, I can go on Facebook and I can type in, I want to do runners of this age. I can't go to Google or Facebook really and target people by a condition. It's like illegal. But like no one's going to really offer up that information. So I knew it was going to be really hard to market because people don't necessarily want it. And on top of that, there's no way to really target those people easily. So as I went through this process, I realized two things. I was like, the way I'm marketing it is not correct. And I would need more partnerships and more content, which I'm a tech person. That's not really my strength. And I kind of believed as like, I wouldn't be happy doing that work, and it's not my strength. And then secondly, I realized like, I don't think apparel is the right answer. Personally, I don't buy a lot of clothing anymore just because I think it's bad for the environment. And I'm generally just become a lot more minimalist. But while we did have an impact and bringing it together, I was like, I want to do something more. Allowing people to wear something is big and we want to make them feel like they're together, but like, how do I actually do something that like actually brings them together, like actually makes them know they're not alone? Like, how do we spark those conversations that I had with some of my best friends that came out of this? How do we do that on like a larger scale and make people feel like they're a part of something, and actually be able to talk to those people to get help or feel normalized? So from there, honestly, so at that point, I was pretty depressed. I went through a really low period because I had never really started a business before. I was so excited. I felt like this was like the universe aligning. And I was like, oh, I love this brand. It feels like kind of where everything in my like life had kind of pointed me to this. And it just felt very good. But at this point I was kind of down. I was like, this business didn't really work. Like, I don't really like, we had used the money that we had raised from the Kickstarter. So I was like, I don't know if I can keep doing this without more funding or this. I had tried to raise investor money and then that fell through. One of the lead investors couldn't do it because of a conflict of interest. So like after that, I was just like, oh man, how am I going to keep moving? And so when I was depressed, I started thinking, somebody had brought up and joking around like, this should be a game. Like, how do you make this an actual sport? And what's a scorecard? And so I started keeping a scorecard for myself, and every day I would track, did I win or lose the day? Like, what was my mood on a scale of 1 to 10? Was I depressed? Was I kind of manic? And then I would start tracking my habits and then write like a little summary of the day each day. And by tracking those 4 things, I did that for a month and I learned so much about myself. Well, A, it reaffirmed a lot of things, but B, it taught me a lot. So I was able to see, like by the end of the month, I had learned that drinking had a massive impact on me. And it's hard to say because if you rate your mood the day that you drink, it's not like valid. It might be like, oh, I'm like an 8 on that day. I had so much fun. But then the next 2 days, you're a lot lower. So I realized that like drinking on the weekends like needed to be limited a lot more. And I mean, alcohol is a depressant, but until I really saw the numbers of how much my mood changed and like the quantitative side of it, I didn't really believe in it. Or I was like, oh, it's fine, I'll be okay. But every Monday I was a lot lower than I was before the weekend. Another thing it taught me is that like learning is the key thing, one of the key things that keeps me happy. On the days when I was learning how to code, when I was reading, whatever I was doing, I was a lot happier. So I realized that like one of my core plays is what we call them now. One of my core habits needed to be learning and like focusing on learning new things. And on the opposite, I learned that if I was ever thinking about money instead of learning, I was really sad. So I feel like, at least society on my end, I was always kind of I would say money driven or just like worried about it. I grew up, we were like a penny pinching family. We were fine. It was like a middle class kind of upbringing, but it was still money focused and like, okay, let's save, save, save. And I think maybe a Midwestern mentality of, yeah, just you don't need much, which I do believe in. But so I realized like, okay, I need to stop thinking about money and I think more about learning and just improving myself. The second thing I realized is that the biggest thing that really impacted my mood was going to be like deep connection with people. Any day I had a great conversation or I had scheduled a dinner with a friend and had like a connection or met somebody new, and like kind of shared my story, not necessarily about mental health, but just like met somebody new. Uh, I was happy. It didn't really matter how bad the rest of the day was. If I had that at the end of the day or whatnot, like the day was a win. And so like those insights alone, like really changed my life of being able to know, like, and once again, none of those are seemingly breakthrough. It might be kind of obvious. Like, exercise is probably good for you. But until I really saw the numbers and like journal about it every day, wasn't ingrained in me, or I didn't want to invest in those things, or I didn't plan my life to be like, okay, if I know I need to have deep connection with people, like what days of the week I do that? Do I need to do it once a week, twice a week? Like how much? Learning, like can I spend an hour every morning studying Spanish or reading a book or whatever it may be? So it's like really made me think proactively, like how do I plan this into my week to make it a lifestyle? So it was huge. And another thing I'll point about the scorecard was, I think what's really important was, instead of usually with a mood tracker, you just like rate your mood, say what you did. So I added like, did I win or lose or tie the day? A, just because I thought it was sports and I wanted to keep it there. But B, the coolest part about it was I had a metric that wasn't tied to my mood. So if I was depressed, I could still win the day. So it's how I reacted to those emotions and not what my emotions were. So it kind of incentivized me to like fight back and like think of like if it was a sport, like if you're down at halftime, you still got 2 quarters left. Like you want to try to win the rest of the day. And so I would try to do that. And so it gave me kind of a new mindset of like not letting an hour that went bad ruin the rest of my day. Once again, it's not 100%, but it built a practice in where I would at least try or have that at the core. So anyway, at the end of that month, I was in a much better place. I was super stoked about it, went forward with my life. And I think this is another story that's really normal with mental health is I was happy. So I stopped doing the things that make me happy. Like eventually you just kind of forget about it. And yeah, so I stopped doing all those things that I had learned. And give me 1 second, let me go grab some water. So yeah, I think it's not just with bipolar, it's with a lot of different things where you'll go up and down. You get to a good place, you start partying or you start just being less looser with your routine and your schedule. And it won't happen immediately, but eventually it catches up with you and you kind of get back into your bad habits. You get back into the things of the negative thought loops. You stop exercising so you don't get like kind of like the dopamine or whatnot hits that kind of can keep you up and inspire you. And so I kind of fell back to where I was before, like super down. And so I realized I needed something more to kind of keep me accountable. And so a job before the elephant pants and like the apparel job I did, I was a product manager for the company. I managed a development team. We were building a weight loss challenge app. And what that app did is people actually put money down, they bet on themselves. And you could say, okay, I'm going to put $10 down that I can lose X% of body weight in a month. And it was based on like, I forget what organizations, like healthy weight loss goals. So we set them a body percentage within a certain amount of time that was healthy. And then we verified it online at the end of the however many days to make sure they lost it. So everyone that lost the weight then split the pot and they could win some money. But the interesting things about that were two, it was a great marketing. People came because they were like, oh, we can win money. But the actual win percentage, the product was so effective because people just don't want to lose money. And the thought of winning it is helpful, but also the thought of losing it is super helpful. But it was very effective. So most of the people lost weight, and like a lot of people hit the goal. So at the end of the time, you would win maybe $10. You wouldn't win amount of money that would change your life. But what was cool is, although that's what they came for, that's not what they stayed around for. What they stayed around for was A, the product worked and they saw their improvement and they felt better about themselves. And then B, they were a part of the community for a first time. So every time you joined a challenge, there was like a feed for everyone that was in the challenge. Similar to a Facebook feed, you could post, you could ask questions, people would share recipes or like workout plans, whatever it may be, things that were helping them. And what we saw is that people came back for a challenge after another. And it was because of the community, because community, it's like going to your favorite bar. If you know people there, you're going to keep going because you feel like you're a part of something. If you are part of a volleyball team or some like rec team, you go back. It's about the people you know, and especially with stigmatized subject matters or stigmatized populations, it's like it's a giant release of like joy to finally feel like you're not an outcast, to finally know like you're not bad at like mad at yourself. So I think weight loss and mental health have a lot of overlap. So I kind of took the learnings from that. I didn't take the betting because I don't think with addiction and whatnot, that would be a healthy motivator. But I was thinking, I was like, how do I get myself to continue doing a scorecard even when I'm in a good place and when I'm in a bad place? Like, how do I get myself to be more accountable to my mental health routine? And I was like, okay, let's put everyone in a group and see what happens. So from the apparel brand, when we launched the hats, we had like 2,000 or 3,000 followers on Instagram. I posted there and we had an email list. I was like, hey, I would like some volunteers. I said it was only men to begin because I wanted it to be different. I was really hoping the MHL could overcome that barrier for stigma. And so I just posted and said, hey, who wants to, for 30 days, keep a scorecard and share it publicly in a team of strangers that you don't know? And I was amazed because like the first day I was trying to have like 10, maybe 15 people, and I had 50 volunteers. We ended up having about 35 actually go through with it. But by the end of the 30 days, it was similar to what I had, was a pretty breakthrough experience for a lot of people. And most of those people, I forget the percentage, posted every single day and stuck with it for the 30 days. And then at the end, they wanted to keep going and they were sad when I wasn't going to keep doing it after the 30 days. So I did reviews and kind of I did surveys, and this was all in a Facebook group. We didn't have an app at the time. And I wanted to test this out. But there was the reviews and kind of the testimonials at the end were mind-boggling. I was crying in a coffee shop. I remember when I first was reading them, because it was a lot of people like, yeah, I don't talk about these things with my wife. I've never talked about this stuff with anybody. And here I am sharing it with a bunch of strangers every single day and sharing like very personal things. And not only that, but they learned a lot. And they saw that it was people that looked like them, but also people that didn't look like them. Because it wasn't based on just people that were bipolar, just people that were dealing with anxiety. It was just kind of a mixed group. And it was a kind of an interesting thing that I learned is, while like niching down or having like a group, let's say we had a bipolar bears team, that is really cool. And there is value in having everyone be the same. But what was also really cool is that since everyone was so different, they found like commonalities and connections, and that it expanded their horizon where they just didn't want to interact. If they were in college, you would see the people that were older, and the college students they're stressed about school, they're stressed about different things. And then like the older participants would be able to give them perspective, or vice versa. So it was just really amazing because I saw like we had, I would guess, just people from very different demographics. I'll say like we had someone that was incredibly Christian from the South that was probably in their 40s connecting with like an 18-year-old trans teen. And it was stuff like that is like the stuff in the news and whatnot that is like very divisive, that for like bonding over mental health struggles kind of brought these people together that I don't think whatever would have crossed paths in normal life, but B, like kind of opened their minds to new people because they were brought together based on a common experience. So it was a really eye-opening I guess not a study for me because there's a lot of connections and a lot of powerful relationships about that, but it taught me a lot about psychology and like what do you really need to bring people together. And people that are bipolar are dealing with a lot of the same things that people with depression are, or vice versa, like whatever the cross analysis is. So I learned a lot. So after that, I mean, obviously I was very like I saw the emotional impact it had on the people that participated. I saw the emotional impact it had on me in leading it. I was like, all right, I got to find a way to keep doing this. And once again, I tried to raise money and it didn't work. I had kind of maxed out. I had put a bunch of money in myself, which was very difficult to kind of let go because I had no idea where this was taking me. And I knew how hard it was going to be. But I was like, it doesn't matter. I got to find a way to keep this going. I had hired a developer to start building it. And then at some point, and I got like the basis of the same functionality of people could fill out a scorecard, they could share it with a group of people, and we could have them fill out a survey and then get like automatically get paired with people like them. So like we were doing it by the mascots to begin. And so we got it built. It was really exciting. And then it was still working, but I didn't know how to grow it. So, and I needed to keep developing it, but I ran out of money. So I went back to code school, which basically like a 4-month boot camp to learn software development. It's something I'd always wanted to do and never wanted to spend the money to do it. But this was finally, thank goodness, finally pushed me to actually do that and invest in myself and invest in another life goal. But so yeah, then I just kept building it. And while the pandemic obviously had a lot of negatives, the good thing is it, like I got out of New York, the pandemic hit, my lease was up. I went and spent time with family, which was incredibly energizing. I was staying with my sister and spending time with my nieces, but it also allowed me just to code for a long time. So it taught me how to code, and I was able to build the app and kind of evolve it over all of 2020, and doing some freelance work along the way to kind of pay the bills. But so yeah, we started growing it. We had some ups and downs, and basically, like right now, we advanced it to just have a lot more advanced functionality as well as like statistics. So there's a bunch of graphs and things that people can see to kind of like visually see their progress over time. And they could connect with other players by seeing their profiles and all the past posts. So we just kind of evolved the app to be a lot more advanced and a lot more helpful. And so that's kind of, it's not where we're at now, but what I kind of realized from there is I still had issues that I had to solve. So it was very coaching intensive. And with coaching, what I didn't like was I found that the coaches were like the only ones responding on the feed for the most part. There would be some interaction amongst the different players on a team, but it was very coach driven. And there's a plenty of coaching products out there, and I didn't really want this to be. I wanted this to be more of a community product and more of a peer-led product. A lot of the people we had using it, were either not going, some of them were going to therapists and were just using this as a supplement, but a lot of them wanted to use it because they wanted to connect with other people. But I found that like having a coach that was a trained social worker, while had some advantages, the disadvantages, I think people either felt like unqualified to reach out or that they didn't need to help the other people. And so I wanted to find a solution that would kind of spark that or incentivize that. So we added a feature called assists, which is similar to like Karma on Reddit or anything else. But basically, people would earn an assist if you liked someone else's posts in the feed, their scorecard, you would earn 1 assist. If you commented, you would earn 3. And it was super rudimentary, but we found like immediately after implementing it, all of a sudden, people started commenting and liking more. And I stopped responding as much. I had other coaches try to stop responding as much to see like, if the more we remove ourselves, will it kind of encourage people to help one another? And it did just that. And there's still more. And I had set a goal, I think, on the homepage of the app to just say, do this, get 1 assist a day, just like another post a day. But as we know, it's psychology. If the more you break something up into a smaller task, the more likely you are to do more than that. So if I know I need to do 100 push-ups, I'll be like, that seems like a lot of push-ups. But if you say, go do 1 push-up, once I'm down doing 1 push-up, I'm probably going to do at least 10 push-ups. And then maybe I'll do like another 10 push-ups. So it's really, the hardest part is always getting started. So by setting that low goal, I think it really made people, not stressed about it. They could just like a post, it's super low touch. But they would also be like want to do more than that over time. So that was like a really big breakthrough of like, okay, we can have like a peer driven thing and maybe have like more intensive things that like the social workers and coaches could do, or have like classes or short-term things that people could enroll in, that are like led by social workers or therapists. But it accomplished the goal of peer driven, and also just made it feel more like a game. And like I've debated whether how important the sports angle is. The brand is already very sports. Oddly enough, I'm not a huge sports fan. So I don't really watch sports. I love the NBA, but in general, I've never been a big sports person. But I really love the theme, and it definitely it was interesting. A lot of the people I would call and get feedback, and they're like, "This is the first mental health brand I ever wanted to be a part of." A lot of it, and it was just people that, as I said, like every other brand in the space generally looks the same, because those are the general people, the population that uses them. But so it found out that by doing the exact opposite, we got the crowd that never wanted to join those other ones. And it was definitely harder, and it might not be as effective or as large of a market, as many customers, but it was something that was definitely needed. So I was like, okay, the sports angle is great. I rewrote a lot of the copy to be all 100% sports themed. And Jordan is a great writer and blogger, so I've brought him on board, which is where I'll go to next. But he was like, okay, maybe it's the brand is a very sports, but maybe not every article needs to be talking about sports. Because we had like basically a 28-day fundamentals camp where I'd get a new article every day, and I like the first one I think was like score like Jordan, which was about doing things, habits that are good for yourself. The next one it was like I forget, it was like rebound with like Rodman, which was about like bouncing back and like rebounding from your tough times. We had assists like Stockton. Like it was all of these kind of classic 90s references and metaphors, and kind of putting like everything in a sports format. So instead of calling it setting boundaries, we would call it blocking. And I would have a metaphor about an offensive line and how no team and a quarterback can really be good without an offensive line kind of clearing the way. And that's how you should look at setting boundaries in your life. So once again, for me, that was helpful, because if you start using psychology terms, A, it's correct and accurate, and you still need the science backing and the data. But if you can talk about it in a metaphorical way that sounds more fun, it's just gonna be more fun. Like if I can think about like, oh, I'm gonna go grab a rebound, or I'm gonna go get an assist, and you feel like an athlete, that's a lot more fun than thinking you're like helping yourself, or like, oh, this is sad, I have to do this because I'm so depressed and helpless, and whatever like the negative thought patterns you would have. So yeah, so the next thing that kind of happened, and kind of the crossroads I had with the business, is A, I didn't have any money, and B, I learned a lot about myself and just the entrepreneurial process of, I'd always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I'd always been a generalist and working at small companies. So I had a lot of different skill sets. And I think the reason I got hired at companies was because I had a lot of different skill sets. If you're a small company hiring me, and I did digital marketing, I'd done search engine optimization, I knew development, I'd done some like user experience and user interface design. So you could hire me, and I'd just kind of be like a utility knife of like, yeah, I can do that well enough. I'm not the best at it, but I'm pretty good. I could figure it out, and I just like learning. So like, if I don't know it, I'll just go learn it. So the good and bad thing about that is A, I could do a lot of these things, which is kind of allowed me to get from point like to where I was with the app. What the problem was is I was burning myself out. Like there was a lot of things that don't give me energy. Marketing, I found out like I can do marketing, but I really don't like it. I don't like writing. I was kind of like an artist, like too attached to the brand and too worried about what people would think, or a little bit too worried about putting myself out there. And like if I had to be the face of the brand, which a lot of, I guess, to have an emotional appeal on a marketing, you'll see a lot of like stigma campaigns are driven with celebrities or what. It's about a story. At some point I was kind of burnt out of telling my story. I was kind of burnt out of writing, and it's not something I really thought I was inherently good at. But since I didn't have money, and since I was working alone, I felt like, oh, I just have to do everything. So at some point I finally realized I was really burnt out. I was like, why? And I found out I was burnt out because I was forcing myself to do all of these things that I shouldn't be doing. And mainly because I didn't have investment. So I thought, I was like, okay, how do I either raise investment, or how do I recruit somebody that's as passionate as I am, but can kind of fill in these gaps? And so it's kind of ironic, is I was building a brand that was about asking for help. And I was about building a brand that was like figuring out what your values are and what you're good at, but I wasn't following that in terms of running the business. In terms of my mental health, I mean, it's still a practice for me to like take care of myself. Self-care is not easy. You still forget about it. like I still have to call my family like, hey, have you been doing this? Have you doing this? And like the people that love me and kind of know how my mind works are kind of my triggers or like the signs when I might not be kind of going down the right path. So that's always gonna be a practice. But with starting a business, once again, the mantra of being an entrepreneur is often hustle, 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 do everything, find ways to do it without money, whatever it may be. And I kind of knew I didn't run away with money because I wanted this to stay small, and I didn't want to kind of have the pressure to make this massive thing, as opposed in like a profit driven thing, as opposed to having something that was more organic and also wouldn't stress me out as much, but like keep it small and impactful with who we can, and maybe over time figure out a way to still do it where it still just wasn't profit focused but impact focused, which I think with the right investors that could still happen, but with the wrong ones or like something super big, it will definitely change. Because I talked to other founders that had gone that route. So I was kind of left at a crossroads being like, the only way I can do this is to find somebody that was as passionate as me and can complement me. So I started going out. I knew I didn't like content. I knew I was bad at marketing or didn't want to do marketing. And the way Jordan I met was through this, is because I started going around the internet, just randomly looking at blogs, looking at like the top mental health writers on Medium, the top mental health when I was Googling different things. And what I found was most of them were female, which isn't inherently a problem, but I really wanted at least the core group of the team to be male, so that we could really start there as our basis, and as we expand the team, have more and more diverse voices. But there's two things I found. There's a lot of females writing, or the big influencers on Instagram. There are very few male influencers on Instagram talking about mental health consistently, as opposed to a one-off. And secondly, a lot of the voices were either very scientific or they were just psychologists, which once again isn't a bad thing, but is not what I wanted to go for. Like I wanted something that was peer driven, and as I said, I wanted things to be very colloquially, and I wanted to talk about things differently for the audience that didn't want the very psychology. I wanted it to people to know that we understood how they felt. Not that you can't do that, but I didn't want them to hear big words and whatnot. So I finally found someone that kind of fit those two things, and it's Jordan Brown, who is here with us today. And I reached out to him and just like a random email, and this is a first for me, just randomly reaching out to someone on the internet and be like, hey, we should talk. And so we did, and originally he was like, oh, this is super cool, but I'm working on my own stuff. I have this job. And so I was at a point where this is where I was kind of rebuilding like the assist architecture. I was adding more statistics to make it feel more like a game. And I was like, all right, like maybe in a couple months, let me finish this development, and then I'm going to go back to him. And that's exactly what happened. A couple months later, I had reached out, and kind of the universe aligned on him having time and kind of seeing what I had worked on and like how fast I had kind of developed things. And we kind of reevaluated. So this kind of brings us to present day. And this was only probably like a month ago where Jordan and I had reconnected. But so long story short, MHL comes 100% from my personal and professional experience. We had a lot of effectiveness, but what we found with entrepreneurship is every time you solve one problem, there's another problem to solve. And so right now I knew I needed to reach out for help and potentially raise money. And that's where we're at now, is we've got a good community that's involved. It's still very small, but effective. I host huddles every Wednesday to anyone that wants to come, where we talk about our weekly wins, losses, and set goals. And then we're still people actively sharing their scorecards in the app. So it's effective. We have people in the app with us for over a year, since there's people that are with us from when we did the original test. So that's over a year ago. And that's really cool. So what I'm proud of is I know the product is effective. I know it's helped me and helped so many others. But I know the next problem to solve is like, how do we grow it and help more people? And at the end of the day, if that never happens, that's fine. But what Jordan and I are now working on is how do we take this to the next step so we can kind of get to a bigger audience and really figure out how to scale this. And once again, he's great at marketing. I'm kind of great at the product and dev, and I just feel more energized doing the things that I actually like doing. And that's exactly where we're at today. So I don't know if I have much more to share in the story, although that is actually the perfect amount of time, I think.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Mike. This was just perfect. What a great start to our webinar. I guess what I would like to ask both you and Jordan to kind of weigh in on is what's missing in kind of the mental health tech space, or there's a reason why you felt like you had to create something new, and also why Jordan felt like there was something that needed to be created. So can you guys talk a little bit about like what wasn't out there that needed to be?
I can kick off if that's all right.
Yeah, you want to go first? Yeah. That's cool.
So yeah, I've kind of gone back and forth, and it's been a journey to figure out exactly what that is. First of all, is the brand. It's something that could appeal to people that generally wouldn't engage with mental health, because 60% of people that need mental health care don't get it, whether it's due to stigma, cost. There's a ton of different factors there with no hard research to know exactly how it is. But A, I needed something that didn't look like it, which I felt like we accomplished that. And B, I felt like something needed to be more peer-driven and data-driven, were the kind of my 2 bullet points of, I love talking to a therapist. I think a lot of what people just need is to talk to someone and feel heard. But the data was something that really changed my perspective, or was something that was more than somebody like, you should do this. When I can see that, oh, my mood is 3 points higher when I do these things. Like, that's a fact that makes things harder for me, which I'm a software engineer. So that was important to me. And then peer-driven. So it didn't feel like you were going to the doctor, which inherently makes you feel like something might be wrong with you. So I wanted to be influenced by science and obviously have advisors, but I did want it to be more peer-driven. And that's kind of where we landed, is data, peer-driven, and just something that kind of appeals to the population that doesn't get it. And then Jordan, whatever.
Yeah, I can go off that. I have a slightly different angle, but I think it's a good jumping off point, is that I believe something that I don't think a lot of people believe, or maybe they do believe it and they don't want to say it, is that I fundamentally don't think that just sending more people to therapists and training more therapists is the answer. I really don't. I don't think that's going to solve the world's problems or the mental health crises that we're facing. I've been to therapists, several therapists. Some were excellent, some were not so great. And I've worked with therapists, social workers, licensed counselors. I have a master's in social work, so I've gotten to work in a lot of different settings. I worked in a pediatric practice. I worked in an inpatient setting in a big city, Richmond, Virginia. And just because you're licensed does not mean that you're good at working with people or you even care about people. I will just put that out there. There are some amazing mental health professionals, but there are some who should not be in the profession, or maybe they got in it because they were trying to deal with their own issues. But I just think that I've been so attracted to what Mike is doing, because it gets to something a bit more fundamental, that this sense of connection, the sense of like, we're all in this together. I love the story that you said about the trans teen connecting with the person in the South. That's incredible. Like, that is, it's almost like more spiritual for me. That I think if we're going to have this big change in how we talk about mental health, it's not just going to be funneling more money into data-driven therapy and getting more people to therapists. That's kind of what you see. That's where the money is in the tech startup world. But I think it needs to be more community-driven, the more peer-based, like Mike said. And that's a lot harder to do, right? Like that. Yeah. I've been on Twitter for years, literally every day tweeting about mental health. And if I talk about maybe not sending someone to a therapist, I get a bunch of therapists attacking. It happens like clockwork if you talk about that. So there's some real challenges, and I think it takes a lot of courage to navigate that system. And I am not currently in social work. I thought I could do more change outside of the social work system, kind of for this reason. But I care about it. I have had horrible things happen to me. My family deals in a cousin right now who is in a hospital again for just bipolar and some really serious psychosis. So I care about it, but I just think that we're not going to be able to keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. It's just not how it works.
Yeah. Well, and to build off that, I do feel like since therapy is really the only framework for a lot of it that most people see as help, I think all the investment money is gone. I'm really tired of seeing startups coming like, we're reinventing therapy. I'm like, that's great. And I'm not saying that is not needed. I probably think we're over indexed on startups that are working on that issue. But more importantly, like, even if you fix therapy, you make it easier to find somebody, you find a pair, like whatever it may be. Two things you're not going to solve is that accessibility. In working with a professional like a doctor, that you're never going to be able to bring the cost down enough to truly access a lot of people that can't. You're never going to make it truly affordable. And secondly, there's not enough therapists out there, I think, overall to handle everyone. And then on top of that, like the demographics that might need help, there's not necessarily the therapist to match them or that understand their experiences. So once again, I think therapy can be improved. I think therapy is super important in the in-person treatment, but I think we're just over-indexed on the number of startups working on that problem, and also the fact that there is other problems that need attention, even if that gets solved.
Can I add one thing, Matt, for our Montana audience here? I just thought it was so interesting because I was in Thompson Falls this past weekend, just, check it out. Right? We did a nice drive to check the foliage, and me and my wife, and I met someone who he's brewery owner, new brewery there, and his wife is actually, he said, the only rural psychologist. And at first I thought like, oh, in the area. He's like, no, in the entire state of Montana, the only rural psychologist. And we're not talking psychiatrist. It's a psychologist. She has a PhD. I think she's a PsyD. And I know there was like one psychiatrist in Eastern Montana at one point in Glendive. So I just think about these models for mental health care. And I think about something I learned about when I got trained to teach the youth mental health first aid course. I went up to Alaska for it when I was working for OPI in Montana, the Office of Public Instruction. And they had a really unique like rural mental health worker program where they would train like community residents who were interested to go through these like levels of certification to help other folks in the area. And I didn't know there are similar programs in like rural Africa. And I just think, is there ever going to be a point where rural Africa or rural Alaska just has a bunch of therapists that are waiting to help people? It's not possible. It's not ever going to happen. So we need to be thinking about these other models of care.
Yeah. Sorry, we just keep building each other. We'll get to another question, but yeah, even
it's a great point. Can I ask one?
Yeah.
One just to piggyback on that, and then we got our first question in the chat. But I'm gonna ask one on Mike. Can you describe a little bit about maybe how someone's journey interacted while being in the mental health league and participating in traditional therapy or psychiatry? I don't think it's a either or. It certainly sounds like medication's been part of your journey. So what does that kind of look like? Is that person talking about what's going on in therapy, or what? Can you talk to us a little bit about somebody that's doing both?
Yeah, and what was interesting as well, a goal of this was to get people that don't interact with mental health care necessarily. The interesting thing is there's a lot of people in our community that they use this as a supplement. I don't see this as a replacement for therapy or replacement for education. I think what makes mental health very difficult is there's no silver bullet, as there are with a lot of physical conditions. So you have to do a lot of different things to like keep yourself on track. So yeah, like for instance, we actually, one of our power users, that's a tech term, but like somebody that's been with us a very long time and is very involved in the community is actually a therapist. So it's people that so every week we have the huddle where we meet on a Zoom call and everyone just talks about their wins and losses. And like people talk about their therapy and how it's helping them, but you can't talk about your mental health too much. Maybe there is a limit, but like, let's say you go to therapy every week and then you're talking to a support group. That is just going to help you all the more and give you different perspectives. And then you also share what you learned through therapy with the group, which then helps everybody else. So yeah, I don't see them as inducive. I see Mental Health League as more of almost like a maintenance program for a lot of people. As if you're in a pretty good place, like that's great. That's like actually where we can work, because if you're having something more serious, you do need a professional. And it's not that you can't use MHL if you're in a more serious condition, but like sharing a scorecard every day is probably not going to get you through a very big life transition or a very big thing, but we can help keep you accountable and we can help do that. So a lot of what I've started to focus on is mental health fundamentals. So as I had mentioned, there's like a game plan. When you join, you have like a fundamentals program where there's like 28 articles, like a daily challenge for you to do different things. And what we teach is like, obviously like the good habits. We teach about how the importance of sleep on mental health, the impact of like coffee, like caffeine and alcohol. We teach like kind of like psychology 101 of what setting boundaries even means, what reframing means. And while people in the mental health space probably are all familiar with those terms, I don't think the population at whole is. And so what's been really cool in this journey is watching people. Some of these people I've known for over a year now, and seeing the impact over time on us just telling them, oh, that relationship doesn't seem healthy to you. Could you set boundaries here? Could you reframe this? And like, as they're kind of talking about their losses for the week, like you can comment in the feed and be like, what if you reframed it this way? And kind of that like daily reiteration, like learning the fundamentals and knowing the terminology is super helpful and gets you to step one. But then having someone kind of remind you as you're sharing like your daily scorecards or talking to us in a huddle, that's just going to reinforce it. So over time, it's now like I'm so proud, like in the huddles or in the thing where you see people now using those terms and now like bringing it, like I'm not reminding them. They're saying, well, I need to set boundaries here because this is bothering me, or this person is taking up too much of their time, or like emotionally affecting me in a negative light, and I need to like recover my time. Or my boss is telling me I need to stay late or take on extra shifts, but like I'm going to say no because I planned my self-care time into my week, and I know if I don't have that, I will be more likely to spiral. So yeah, so I don't see it as a replacement, as more of either maintenance or just like almost like mental health 101 that then gets you comfortable moving up the ladder to kind of like the in-person treatments or medication. Because also we have people that don't like medication, which is fine if you can find a way to manage other ways, but also sometimes they ask like, oh, you're on medication, it's okay. And once they know someone that's on medication, because they actually talk about it, they're like, oh, maybe it's not such a bad thing. So I think sharing all that is just only helps all the more.
So I think we may have lost the Helena group somehow, Matt and Colleen, but I could jump in here, and because there's some questions, and Tim, did we lose them?
Yeah, I was just texting with them that something's wrong with their internet, but there is a question from Jenna Smith in the chat. Would you like to ask it, Jordan?
Yeah, I was just looking at that because and could I also, I know Shirley left a comment too. Shirley, I'm not totally understanding that question. Could you add a little more context? Maybe Mike knows, but here, I'll go over Jenna's question here. So Jenna is saying, I'm very interested in what you're doing. I too am a nomadic entrepreneur with a massive interest in mental health and can relate to so many things you covered today. Maybe this is another question. I have someone I'd like to connect you to who has built a very successful online community specific for substance use. What can I do to help you? So Jenna, hopefully we didn't just say something that you didn't want shared publicly, but I think that speaks to the substance use. And I think there's a lot of overlap between these communities. I wonder if, Mike, you talk about if you see that as well, if you see like different kinds of communities connecting with you because of this, because it's.
Yeah, I mean, the dream has always been to have a mascot for like every condition, and to go and do addiction, have mascot for BPD, like all the other things. I started with these four just because in terms of population and like demographic, like the amount affected by it, I kind of started there as well as my personal experience. But yeah, I mean, Jenna, we need plenty of help, and especially in being open to new audiences and people that want to help. And I do think the other thing that's interesting about what you said is I think now that we are moving to remote work, like nomads or entrepreneurs are definitely more of like a lonely population a lot of times, or feel alone, and they're probably going to be more likely to struggle with conditions because of that. But also remote work can spark that because if you, let's say you usually go to your spouse or someone in your family, but if you're with them all the time every day and working nearby, like some of the problems are going to be with them and you need other people to talk to. So I actually think that's a great demographic that we probably should focus on and maybe could niche down to, both in addiction as well as kind of remote workers or nomads.
That's great.
But Jordan, did you delete that? I just need to grab the
No, it's in the, if you click Q&A, we'll make sure to copy that.
Jenna, I will grab your contact information and reach out.
In the meantime, I saw Shirley added more information there, so thanks, Shirley. You said I had noticed quality of life improves as a person finds purpose in life. Is this addressed in the app? Excuse me, Freudian slip there.
It touches on it, although I think we could do a better job of that. Because I agree. I think when I started working on a mission, and like the Mental Health League is a mission that I realized, and once I realized that, it definitely helps you be happier in a lot of ways. But on top of that, defining your values, which we kind of focus on more, which is, I guess, good habits, but that kind of go down of like, what are your core tenets of who you are? Do you need exercise? Are you focused on your family? So a lot of your habits are actually representations of what your values are. So no, I think we should definitely do that. And I think that could be maybe after the fundamentals of the psychology fundamentals is kind of leveling up. Because if you're dealing with, like, if you're not taking care of yourself, I don't think you can, unless you have that foundation of fundamentals, I don't know if you can really move to purpose yet. Because it'll be just harder to stick with it. And I think the fundamentals, at least in my opinion, are kind of the first step, and then we can move up. But yeah, I think that's a game plan we could definitely develop and have more of a focus on for sure.
And Mike, we had a question from Colleen Turner. She went to the website and saw that you have an application for the iPhone. She's wondering, do you have an Android app as well, or what the game plan might be to get that going?
Sadly, no. This has been something I've needed to do for a while and just have not been able to yet. It's actually not a huge lift, but yeah, so I don't have a timeline on that, although I know it's definitely a need and something I want to get, because we're only limiting ourselves in terms of accessibility.
Great. And is there one or two more questions for Mike or Jordan?
And that's something I could ask too if no one else has a question, but see if anyone else has a question first.
Go ahead, Jordan.
All right. Well, something that stuck out for me, I wrote it down when you were talking early in your story, how you saw the image of the bipolar bear. You said you were in college. Is that when you saw that? Why do you think that you saw that image and decided to do something positive and transformative? Because I could easily see someone seeing something like that and think, oh, that's stupid. Look, what a way to, I don't like that, or not have a connection. Because you said you'd struggled with mental health as well. Why do you think you turned into this big thing at that point?
I think probably two reasons. Is one, I'm definitely more of like a design oriented person. So I think seeing something artistic about something I matched with my identity was really important. And once again, it kind of gave me, I don't know, maybe solace. And then the second thing is, I mean, in college, I was seeking out a lot, because after your diagnosis, like I remember after I was diagnosed, I was freaking out. I was like, oh, my life's over. I was looking up, it's like searching WebMD of all the terrible statistics of like what's going to happen to you. With bipolar, a lot of them are pretty frightening, to be honest. And so I was kind of at a place where I was struggling and just doing a lot of research. So I think just having something that was like lighthearted and kind of fun. When you say bipolar bear, it's just kind of fun. Yeah, that's really it. It's just playful instead of dreary. And I think that was probably why, and it's something I really needed at that time.
Great.
That's perfect. Mike, thank you so much. We are at the top of the hour, and I just want to be really respectful for people's time, but this was such an amazing presentation. What a wonderful way to kick off our webinar series. Thank you so much for all that you and Jordan do.
Thank you for having me and giving me the platform, and we're going to keep working to continue this. So thank you everybody for coming and kind of dedicating your time to listening, and I guess in general your passion for mental health. So let's keep working.